Spanair Flight 5022 was one of the deadliest aviation disasters in modern history. But what if I told you this tragedy could have been prevented? A simple checklist mistake, a faulty sensor, and a deadly chain of events that sent this aircraft plummeting to the ground just moments after takeoff. What really happened inside the cockpit? What went wrong? And what lessons did the aviation industry learn from this catastrophe? In this deep dive, we uncover the final moments of Flight 5022, the hidden errors that led to disaster, and the crucial safety measures that could have stopped it. Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at flight safety the same way again. To understand the disaster, we must first understand the airline itself. Spanair was once a promising airline, launched in 1986 as a subsidiary of Scandinavian Airlines to serve Europe's popular holiday destinations. But by 2008, Spanair was fighting for survival. The global financial crisis had hit, and the airline was bleeding money. Plans to sell Spanair to Iberia collapsed, forcing the airline to slash jobs and ground aircraft just to stay afloat. Behind the scenes, pilots were nervous about their future. First Officer Francisco Muley, just 31 years old with only 1,276 flying hours, was among the most vulnerable to layoffs. He was already looking for jobs elsewhere, unsure how much longer he would have work at Spanair. Meanwhile, Captain Antonio Garcia Luna was a 39-year-old veteran with over 8,500 flying hours, over half of them in the McDonnell Douglas MD-82. He was experienced, competent, and respected among his peers. But even experienced pilots can be pressured by the wrong circumstances. Their aircraft, registration EC-HFP, was 15 years old, originally built for Korean Air before being transferred to Spanair in 1999. Like all MD-80 series jets, it was a workhorse, efficient, reliable, but showing its age. Unlike modern Airbus planes with extensive automation, the MD-82 relied heavily on pilot memory and physical checklists. Every takeoff required the correct manual configuration, particularly the deployment of flaps and slats. That responsibility lay entirely on the pilots. And if they got it wrong, the aircraft wouldn't fly. At 10:13 a.m., Spanair Flight 5022 arrived in Madrid from Barcelona. The turnaround was expected to be smooth: refuel, board passengers, and depart by 1 p.m. for Las Palmas, a 3-hour flight to the Canary Islands. But that's not how the day unfolded. As the pilots carried out pre-flight checks, configuring the aircraft for departure, a minor but annoying technical problem appeared. The RAM air temperature RAT probe was giving wildly high temperature readings, far above the real ambient conditions. At first, this seemed like a small issue, but it was about to cause a deadly chain reaction. After starting their engines and taxiing toward the runway, the pilots noticed the erroneous temperature reading. The RAM air temperature RAT probe was showing 104 degrees Celsius, far above the real 29 degrees Celsius temperature at Madrid Airport. Why did this matter? Because the MD-82's auto throttle system used RAT probe data to calculate engine thrust limits. With such a high false reading, the aircraft system would incorrectly limit power, possibly leading to an underpowered takeoff. The pilots had two choices: manually override the system or fix the problem before departure. Captain Garcia Luna opted for the second option, contacting Spanair's maintenance team in Palma de Mallorca via cell phone while idling on the runway threshold. The recommendation? Try resetting the Z29 circuit breaker. But it didn't work. At 1:42 p.m., with no other quick fix available, the pilots aborted takeoff and taxied the aircraft to a remote maintenance stand at the airport. Passengers remained on board, waiting in the searing heat. Inside the cabin, temperatures soared to 46 degrees Celsius, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, as the air conditioning was turned off. Sweat dripped down passengers' faces. People fanned themselves, struggling to breathe. Flight attendants tried to keep passengers calm, but tension was rising. The pilots were also feeling the pressure. They had already wasted nearly an hour, and the longer they waited, the worse the delays would be for Spanair, an airline that couldn't afford disruptions. The maintenance team couldn't fix the rat probe issue, but they had a workaround: disable the probe heater manually by pulling a circuit breaker. With the problem deferred, Captain Garcia Luna was eager to get back in the air. He rushed through the checklists, responding to First Officer Moulet before he could even finish reading them. But then, the worst mistake of all. In the rush to get moving again, the pilots never redeployed the flaps. They had correctly set them before their first taxi attempt. But when they shut down the plane during maintenance, the flaps retracted. And in their second attempt to taxi, they never extended them again. A simple oversight. But in aviation, a simple oversight can be lethal. At 2:24 p.m., Spanair 5022 was cleared for takeoff. The engines roared as the MD-82 thundered down the runway, reaching rotation speed. First Officer Moulet pulled back on the controls, but something was horribly wrong. Instead of soaring into the sky, the aircraft struggled to climb. The control columns shook violently, a stall warning blared. Then, disaster. The MD-82 banked sharply to the right. The tail struck first, followed by the right wingtip. The aircraft skidded 500 meters before hitting an embankment and bursting into flames. 154 people never made it home. As smoke billowed over Madrid Barajas Airport, the scale of the disaster became clear. Firefighters and rescue workers battled through the wreckage, searching for survivors. But for 154 people, it was too late. In the days following the crash, Spain's Civil Aviation Accident and Incident Investigation Commission launched an inquiry to find out what went wrong. Investigators had one major question: why didn't the plane climb? As investigators combed through the wreckage, one discovery shocked them. The flap handle in the cockpit was in the retracted position, meaning the pilots never deployed the flaps and slats before takeoff. This alone should have never happened. Setting the correct flap position is one of the most basic steps in a pilot's checklist. But what made this crash even more disturbing was that this exact mistake had killed before. In 1987, Northwest Airlines Flight 255, another MD-82, crashed for the exact same reason, killing 154 people. In 1988, Delta Flight 1141 crashed in Dallas due to the same mistake. In both cases, pilots forgot to set the flaps, but in both cases, a crucial warning system should have saved them. The MD-82's takeoff warning system was designed specifically to prevent flaps-up takeoffs. If pilots advance the throttles for takeoff without setting the flaps, the TOWs should sound a loud horn, followed by a computerized voice saying, "Flaps, slats." But on Flight 5022, it never activated. Why? Investigators dug into the aircraft's electrical systems and uncovered a deeply disturbing issue. The takeoff warning system relied on a small electrical relay buried deep inside the plane's circuitry. This relay, called R2-5, controlled whether the plane's systems recognized if it was on the ground or in the air. On Flight 5022, R2-5 failed. It incorrectly signaled that the aircraft was already airborne, even though it was still on the ground. That meant the takeoff warning system never activated because the plane's computer thought it was already flying. But there was something even worse. Just 3 months earlier, another Spanair MD-82 had suffered the same rat probe heating issue. The fix? Replace relay R2-5. Yet in this case, no one realized that a simple $20 part replacement could have prevented the disaster. But even if the takeoff warning system failed, the pilots should have caught their own mistake. Checklists are the last line of defense against human error. But Spanair's checklists had a fatal flaw. In most airlines, flaps and slats appear early in the checklist to ensure they're set before takeoff. But Spanair's checklists put them last. This meant that if the checklist was interrupted, the flaps check could be completely forgotten. And on Flight 5022, that's exactly what happened. Investigators also found something even more troubling. Psychological pressure played a huge role in the disaster. The pilots had already taxied to the runway once, then had to abort. They knew the airline was struggling financially. Delays meant angry passengers, stressed airline staff, and mounting costs. The cockpit voice recorder revealed something chilling. As the plane was preparing for takeoff, Captain Garcia Luna was rushing through checklists, even answering items before the first officer could finish reading them. This rushed mindset made a critical mistake feel normal, and by the time they realized something was wrong, it was too late. At 2:24 p.m., Spanair 5022 began its takeoff roll. First Officer Moulet pulled back the control column, but the plane barely lifted. Then, the stick shaker activated, a violent warning telling the pilots that the plane was about to stall. In that moment, they didn't understand why. Had they deployed the flaps, the MD-82 could have climbed easily. Instead, it was dragging itself into the sky, struggling to stay airborne. The aircraft banked sharply to the right. The tail hit first, then the right wing. The plane skidded for 500 meters, hit a fence, and exploded. It came to rest in a stream, engulfed in flames. In the wake of the crash, major changes were made. Europe mandated that TOWS checks be performed before every flight. Boeing changed the MD-80 stall recovery procedure to include a flap check. More airlines adopted flaps-up visual checks before takeoff. But could this happen again? The truth is, yes.